a lot of us thought it wouldn't take a week, right? And that they wouldn't be losing Russian soldiers at the rate they reportedly are. I mean, who knows what to believe when they repeat these numbers. The Russians lie, the Ukrainians lie. We don't know what's real in terms of the losses. But why do you think it's taken 1 week for him to capture one city?
Sure. Well, if you think of it almost in terms of a boxing match, you've got a heavyweight who is much larger than the opponent, right? The Russians are the bigger, stronger, heavier boxer than the Ukrainian forces they're fighting against. And absolutely came out with a big swing and tried for a knockout right away. That doesn't mean that now that it goes 12 rounds, that you're not going to see something that is unfortunately favoring the larger, stronger opponent, which is, I think, where we are. Yeah, absolutely. Putin, and I think that whatever, the intelligence assessments are still classified, but what's made it into the press seems to be there was a belief among the Russians that he could, among the Russian leadership, among Putin and his top advisors, that he could probably do this in a few days. Okay, he also planned for it not to go a few days. That's why he only deployed maybe 10% or so of his actual forces gathered on the Ukrainian border in the first week. So when you look at that, I mean, if the whole plan were to just go and knock out the Ukrainian resistance and either have Zelensky flee the country or be captured, wherever it may be, in a week, he would have gone with everything he had or something close to it. He went with a small portion of it to see if maybe he could. Exactly. I mean, this is when you look at other military campaigns. Sure, would we have loved it if Saddam Hussein had been capitulated or even died in an initial strike of shock and awe? Yeah, but there's a reason why we had hundreds of thousands of troops ready to go and not just what was already in country or the airstrikes. My concern, Megyn, is that the Russians are going to, and this is, I think, part of when I say the plan, I mean, everything is dynamic, right? There is that great line by Mike Tyson that no plan survives. Everybody has a plan until they get, that's a different line I was going to quote. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. That's the reality of all warfare, all conflict. And no plan survives first contact with the enemy is the other famous line. So the Russians, I think, are prepared for this. What you're going to see likely is the encirclement of Kyiv and a major air campaign. And this goes to where the Russians, whenever you're invading another country, you're on someone else's turf. We saw this in Iraq. We saw this in Afghanistan. It's very hard to do ground operations, stability operations, because you're just vulnerable. You're in convoys. They can see you coming. They know where you're going to be, and they know how to hit you. When you use air superiority, which we also had in those two countries, but use it in a way that the Russians will be willing to, which I think tragically, unfortunately, is going to be pretty indiscriminate and high-level casualties. I mean, Chechnya, I think very few people in America have an understanding of the recent Russian history in Chechnya. That's the closest.
When you say Chechnya, this is what I think of. I think of a scene from Bridget Jones where Renee Zellweger is out with Hugh Grant, and she's trying to make conversation with him, and she says, "Isn't it horrible what's happening in Chechnya?" And he says, "Jesus, Jones, I couldn't give a f." I'm giving up swearing for Lent. So that's the thing. Like, people are like, "Who? What? Where?"
Yeah, I actually haven't seen Bridget Jones, but
oh my God, Buck! What am I going to do with you? You've been out advising all these presidents on wars and CIA matters. You haven't been doing the important stuff.
Yeah. So I have to add that one to the list. But yeah, as for Chechnya, and it's interesting because it actually would be much more. I think it's better known in the European context just because of the geography and closer in the neighborhood. But the Russians went in twice. Under Yeltsin, 1994, 1996, the Soviet Union dissolves, and you have all these independent former Soviet republics popping up. And some of them did so. I think the line from Yeltsin was something like, you can have all the sovereignty you can stomach or something like that, right? Like, go for it. If you want to break off and, the economy's a mess, go for it. Except for Chechnya. And that had to do in large part with it being an enclave of, radical Islam, jihadism, and there were concerns that this would be something that could stretch well beyond Chechnya if they were allowed to have this as a stronghold. At least that was the Russian point of view on it. Anyway, they went in. The Russians effectively lost the first incursion. The Chechens, I always think this is interesting, Megyn, hill people, whether it's the Scots or it's the Hmong in Southeast Asia or it's the all the tribes in Afghanistan. Hill people tend to be pretty fierce and into resisting central authority. Same thing's true in Chechnya, where the Chechens have a centuries-long history of being fighters, essentially. Bandits, fighters, honor society where they will die before they submit, that kind of stuff. So they fought the Russians, actually beat the Russians well enough that they maintained some degree of independence. Then Putin comes along, which is, I think, the interesting part of the quick history I'll do. And this is, I think, 1999 or so. And Putin comes in, they fake, using FSB agents, some apartment bombings, kill a whole bunch of Russians and say, oh, that was the Chechens who did that one. So now we got to go in with everything we've got. And Megyn, they basically leveled Grozny, which is the capital city or the primary city in Chechnya. And that was a very bloody fight where they brought in and Putin was willing to just use artillery and airstrikes to beat them. And finally, after 10 years of fighting, I think 2009 or so, it was considered over. So, although it still goes on in little pockets here and there. So Putin is the guy who came in and is like, whatever we have to do. And that's how he rose to power. People got to remember this. That was in the beginning, right? So Putin, I think, has both the mindset and also the experience to elevate things dramatically in Ukraine to get his way. That's what I think is going to happen. And again, this is one of those times I really hope I'm wrong. I hope the Russian casualties, which are high, are such that Putin is getting pressure from home and all this sort of stuff. I just don't think that's the way it's going to play out.
He's not typically a guy who bends under pressure. It's not exactly what he's known for. I'll tell you, just in my own life here, talking to moms who are only keeping one finger on the news cycle, they don't have the full pulse covered, will say, like, could they win? I'm praying for the Ukrainians. Like, maybe they can do it. And I think, sadly, we're confusing hope with, predictions. We would all like to see the Ukrainians and Zelensky manage to pull out a W. It's a sovereign nation. It's been invaded. You don't want to see the invaders conquer. But it doesn't look like it's going to go that way, especially with the more time that goes on. And now they're saying, some people in the intelligence and defense communities are saying this thing could go on for 10, 15 years, that where you have basically an insurgency going on within Ukraine, the fighting never ends. Ukraine is completely destroyed as a country. And even if they wind up getting it back after all that time, what are they getting back? And we're seeing it destroyed brick by brick on the news every night, right? So there's not a lot of hopeful outcomes that are realistic right now with Ukraine. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.